us today, because I think the biggest thing we've noticed over this past year, and for those of you who are new, welcome. We started doing this really because of COVID. So you can maybe thank COVID for something, which should be these awesome webinars that we have started doing. We've had a lot of great information shared from our community, as well as experts. And so today would be really one of those highlighting our experts sessions, because at the end of the day, we're all looking for jobs. The most stressful part of it is knowing what your hiring managers are looking for, those who posted the job, those who are ready to have you working at their company. And so today we're excited that we have members of our volunteer group and Techlahoma community members from Hartwig Staffing who will be helping us navigate a great discussion today. So for all of those of you who are new, we are with Techlahoma, and Techlahoma is a nonprofit here in the state of Oklahoma to advance Oklahoma's grassroots technology community, whether that be through education, jobs, networking. However, we want to help to connect those within our community all around. We have 25 user groups, we have 3 conferences, and we sponsor lots of free local events. If you're joining us via YouTube or chat or YouTube or Twitch, we do not have chat enabled this time, but I will show you in just a second how you can engage with us. Also, I want to make sure that we promote our code of conduct. We want to make sure that everyone is supporting each other with dignity and respect during our webinars. We have our code of conduct listed here on the conduct.techlahoma.org site. And so once you get engaged with our Slack channel, just keep all of that in mind as you engage with our community. Again, our community is comprised of a variety of different people of different educational levels, local businesses. We also have our targeted user groups that could be hardware or software focused, entrepreneurship or educational. And so if Techlahoma is new to you, please get involved at involved.techlahoma.org. And these are all those different methods in which you can get involved with us. And so again, you can go to techlahoma.org. For our Slack channel, you can go to our Techlahoma website and find the Slack channel there. And if you are going to get involved in that way, which we hope you do because we know you have a ton of questions, we have started a channel just for today called Techlahoma Jobs Webinar, because we have started doing these webinars for a lot. We'll promote it in some of our other channels in just a second. But let's get straight to why you decided to come. I think that intro was as fast as I could make it, because we want to get to your questions and answers. We have our team from Hartwig Staffing here in Oklahoma City, owner Rebecca and team member Sarah, who will be hosting our panelists. You're going to hear straight from our hiring managers. They have a list of questions that they'll be going over to be able to help you in your job search. And then, as I mentioned again, join us in our Techlahoma Slack channel, Tech Jobs Webinar, which is the channel. And Rebecca and Sarah, I will let you now introduce our guests.
Why, thank you. Well, thank you so much to our panelist speakers today. Thank you for taking the time to chat with us. I wanted to just do a brief introduction. We have Diana Biddle on call. She is the Vice President and Chief Information Officer with American Fidelity, with over 20 years of experience in the tech field. We have James Poplin, who is the Vice President and Director of Technology Advancement with MidFirst Bank, with well over 17 years of tech experience. Greg Starling, the Head of Strategic Partnerships and Corporate Development with Tailwind, also with 20 years plus of experience. And Devonna Whitfield, the Director of Information Technology and Applications with W&W AFCO Steel, with over 10 years of experience in the tech field. I know you guys want to hear from these panelists much more than you want to hear from Rebecca and I. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right to our questions so you can hear from them. So this is for all 4 panelists. What tech skills or maybe new developments are you seeing as most need in the market right now that candidates should be gearing themselves toward? And James, we can start with you.
Perfect. I'll jump right in then. So not only do I handle the technology advancement at MidFirst Bank, but we're also the initiative for AWS and Azure and any other of the cloud data centers. Within that, you've got your AI capabilities, your data science, your big data, your Power BI, your Tableaus. You have all of those things that are within that. That's the new technology that's coming to pass. It's becoming easier and easier for companies to leverage AWS, Azure, or those SaaS offerings or IaaS offerings or BaaS offerings, whichever you're looking at. Those are the big things right now. That's what we're pushing for. We're trying to get our data in so we can get the data analytics. So coming out, you have to understand the data, how I can collate that data, how I can report on that data, and then run through the mix of it, whether that be a data science or mapping or whichever that looks like.
Thank you. Devonna?
So I will echo that comment as well. I think some of the most important skills that I would look for today would be the data analytics, someone who's proficient in SQL, querying, just being able to pull that data, being able to analytically look at that data. And as well as the security side, that's a big emphasis in our environment, is to make sure that our applications are secure, our data is secure, making sure our infrastructure is secure. So those are two kind of big skills that we are looking for, and I see for future growth that will really be needed in our environment. So those are two big skills that I would say that people would focus on to help them succeed in finding something in the tech field.
Thank you. What about you, Greg? What do you think?
I'm trying not to be boring and echo the echo of the echo, but the cloud is big, right? And I think practically getting out of, I think it's pretty easy, and I think everybody would agree that AI and ML and deep learning are the future, and that's where everybody's heading. People are getting really clever with bots, chat bots, things like that, to take a lot of the customer service offload, as well as some other things. But practically, there is still an enormous need for JavaScript developers, Node on the front end, Node, things like that. So, and that's a much lighter lift to get into. If you're just getting into software, you don't really need a data science degree to really understand like how some of the really deep machine learning things you might. So depending on where you're at in your career, JavaScript might be an easier entry point, but there's an enormous need, to everybody else's point, around the AI and ML space.
Sir, if you don't mind, I'd like to add one thing too. One of the big initiatives I believe is being pushed right now is automation, and whether it be robotics or UiPath or whatever that looks like, understanding what that type of development looks like as well. I think Java is huge, not to mention the leverage in what we do within the cloud services, but robotics is becoming a big push in a lot of different markets for that automated and get rid of the mundane type of tasks that we're doing. So if you understand how to develop within that world, it's a really hot environment right now for sure.
Diana, do you? I know American Fidelity has a great intern program. Anything that you see on your end?
So I don't want to echo, because I do echo what everyone else said, but I would add to it AI, machine learning, and I would also be remiss if I didn't mention soft skills, because corporate budgets are getting tighter and tighter, and so we're in need of well-rounded technologists. So not only have the strong tech skills, but also have the strong soft skills, and are able to work with users. They're able to work within teams and that sort of thing as well.
Thank you.
I kind of have a question to tag on. So some of these things that you all said are great. What's advice would you give to people if they don't have experience in this yet? What advice would you say for them to get it, to learn it, certifications that you would recommend?
So I'll start. One of the things that I've always recommended to people that are interested in getting into the tech field is go take a class and try it. You know, there are plenty of offerings at career techs. There are plenty of offerings at the 2 and 4 year universities. Go see what it's about. Go, you know, dip your toe in and see what you like. There's also there are a ton of online resources where you can self-teach. You can take courses online, but take a class in it. That not only gives you an idea of what it is, but it also shows potential employers your interest and that you're willing to do what you need to do to get those skills.
I would echo that as well. And I don't want this to just be an echo thing, but I mean, you all can see the trends as you're listening to us, but that's one advantage of being in the technology space. You don't necessarily have to go and get a 4-year degree in something if you're trying to go into a specific avenue or a different avenue. There are plenty of online resources, and that's what I would suggest is to just go out there. Plural side, Coursera, there's so many different ways that you can jump in there and take that class on whatever interest or topic that you're looking to get into, and that will show to employers that you do have that interest as well as that determination and ability and just, you know, initiative on yourself to be able to show that you're trying to move into that direction, you're interested in going in that direction. And I think that helps out a lot without you having to fully, you know, give so many years to going down a direction that you're not sure about. I would just say go and take a class and start there.
Love it.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I had nothing to add. I just said I love it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would say like there are so many good like micro degrees that you can get now. Ivana mentioned Coursera. There's all kinds of there's things you can get from MIT and Stanford, and not for the piece of paper, but it's just a really light. You know, a lot of times there's 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and rather than going down and saying, "Hey, I want to be a computer science person," and spending 4 years and realizing you don't actually like it, you can really kind of jump into some of those short programs. And really honestly, like if I were giving my advice to my son who's 11, if he were say 18, I would say go that route and get some good internships. I think that's the route I would personally recommend. And I'm messing around. I mentioned bots earlier. There's so many easy courses just for fun on the weekends. Just kind of pick up and play with whatever technology you're interested in. You can almost always find some really good tutorial and spin something up yourself. And that speaks a lot to an employer. Like, well, look what I'm doing in my free time. That's a huge thing.
James, do you have any thoughts? Because I feel like with development, it's easier to learn and try and pick up code with free code classes, but maybe on the infrastructure side, getting access to hardware that big corporations have.
It is difficult. It's difficult as someone coming fresh into the environment to have a server farm, we'll call it that. But most of the things that we're dealing with now is virtual servers or virtualization as a whole, whether it be ESX or whatever hypervisor you're looking at there. You do have the ability to run free versions of that, and you can run that on anything. And so look into what it takes to be able to run a small virtual environment, rather it be hosted. You could run EC2 instances within AWS. You could run servers within Azure or whatever that looks like to understand the hypervisor level, and then you can work at the server level. A big tool that most technologists need to understand, especially on a network operations or network administration side, is scripting and PowerShell and the things associated to what Microsoft is really pushing for. How do I do tasks that are more advanced than just in a GUI? Well, they're going to be through PowerShell. How can I learn that more? Well, you can do the micro classes. There's no doubt about that. You can do training, but having your hands in that C# type of environment for PowerShell is the only way to truly understand how to write those scripts. And then there's a lot of scripts that have already been written out there. There's a lot of automated things done in PowerShell that are wrapped in GUI envelopes or whatever it may be that the person can download and dissect it and go through the bits of those. So it gets more into the development piece of it. However, you do have the ability to run those virtual servers for free most of the time. Those spot instances or whatever it looks like.
Great feedback.
Okay, let's jump to our next question. What would be you all's best advice to individuals to better capitalize on their network or networking skills to help further their career, find their next role? I feel like that's something most people don't like to do. It's not as enjoyable. It's, going to a big networking event. But what are you all's advice on taking advantage of that or using your network? Jane.
Okay.
Greg. Go.
Yeah, I would say two things that I think everybody's different, right? And Rebecca, to your point, like everybody has strengths and weaknesses and things they like and they don't like. But I think people are much more willing to help than people give them credit for. I've never had anybody reach out to me, even as busy as I've been. I might say, can we get back together? But just asking for help or asking for if I know somebody who knows somebody and not try to make that connection. So I think just stalking people in the area of your interest and reaching out to them on LinkedIn or getting their contact information, however you go about stalking, getting that contact information, just trying to find people that are doing what you're doing or doing what you want to be doing, getting in touch with them. And then I am a huge fan of having a personal like CRM where that reminds you to, because you work so hard getting that connection and finding that person. The worst thing I think you can do is just letting that like connection kind of die on the vine. And so even if it's just a reminder every 3 months or 4 months, just, hey, don't forget to email Rebecca, which is actually a reminder that I've had for years. Just make sure, because it's not that we don't actually care. It's just we all tend to get busy, and CRM is a really good way to make sure you don't get too busy to maintain the relationships that are really kind of hard to get in the first place. Those would be the two things I'd say.
Is there
Sarah's probably
is there a CRM that you're using now?
That's a good.
I use HubSpot, the free version.
I love that.
That is a great idea. It's like your little own to-do follow-up list for, you could probably check in on mom too, but you know what I mean? But that's good to use stuff like that for business. I like it. Devonna, you go.
Okay. So I would say not necessarily to look for the perfect mentor. I think people are thinking, oh, I need this, perfect mentor to mentor me through XYZ on my career path. I think you can learn things from anyone you meet. And so I think, just using the people in your circle or the people that may know someone that may be in the field that you're trying to get into, just take those and organically grow those connections and relationships. And it may not be in a server development, but this person may help you in your soft skills, being more of a leader in your environment, or this person may help you on a different path, or just not go into it thinking that you need this, model mentor to help you throughout your career. Just look at it organically and learn through different relationships that you have with different people. Of course, LinkedIn or different events that you go to, just be intentional about getting their information. Like Greg said, making a point to keep them on your forefront as far as contacting them and keeping in touch with them. But I just think that you can learn in so many different avenues and from so many different people. And I just think just keeping an open mind in doing that, I think that will help build your career and your career path a long way.
I think another thing is don't be afraid to ask your circle to introduce you to someone else in their circle, because that's a good way to meet new people and not have that awkward, how do you start this conversation, because your friends can help you along the way. And I totally support mentoring, and not only being a mentor, but being a mentee. So no matter how high you climb in an organization, you still need to be a mentee. And I've actually been working with my mentor for 13 years now, and she's actually retired from the company I work for, and about 4 years ago, and we still meet every other week. So I think it's important to be both sides of that mentoring relationship.
That's awesome. I love that. James, I think, do you have anything you want to add?
I do want to echo that for sure. The aspect of something that you can grab a hold of that's a personal relationship that I can bounce. You know, I'm in this situation. How do I handle this? Or I handled it this way. Can you slap me a little bit around and tell me if I did it right? I mean, I think it's extremely vital to have not only internal to your operation, and whether that be your operation of trying to get a job in technology or whatever that may be, but also external. It's very important, I think, from a morale point of view and a leadership point of view, to have multiple different mentors or someone that you can ping off of. It doesn't have to be I'm wearing a mentor badge. It can simply be a friend. Rebecca and I have been friends for many years. There's many times that her and I are pinging things off of one another during our lunches or whatever that looks like. That's still a mentor and a mentee, depending on how we're handling that. I think leveraging those type of relationships and friendships allow you to grow and allow you to get feedback, allow you to understand the circle that you're in. And I love the aspect of asking your circle to do things, rather that be give you documentation, rather it be a connection, rather it be a phone call, an introduction, whatever that looks like to help you get to your next step. Always be planning. They're there for you. They've invested in your friendship, your relationship, whatever that looks like. They're going to be invested in your future as well.
Another thing I would add to that too, you just made me think of it, is that you need an accountability partner. You need someone that's not just going to tell you what you want to hear, but they're going to tell you what you need to hear, and be open to that information so that you can use it to grow and build on your skills.
Great advice. Great advice.
Well, and I love hearing from you four, because you all are high up in you've had great successful careers, and hearing from you all say, it's okay to reach out to someone like me and ask for guidance. You know, like, don't be intimidated to ask, a VP of IT or a CIO or, for guidance and advice. So that's great.
Well, I'll tell you, in my mentoring relationships with my mentees, I feel like I cheat them a little bit, because I feel like I actually learn more from them in the relationship than they're learning from me. So, always be open and willing to learn and grow.
It takes a village. What about moving to our next question? Biggest pet peeves, or maybe some top suggestions for resumes, interviews, whether that be in person or virtual. What have you been seeing?
I'll jump in on that one. That's okay. I love buzzwords. One of the things that we've talked about in this agenda is buzzwords, whether it be IaaS or SaaS or BaaS or whatever the infrastructure as a service type of slogan is, or SQL, or you name the word that's important in the day-to-day life of IT. Most resumes that I see come across the desk from a technologist are simply just listing those, and they're listing them as in, I'm proficient in this. Well, okay, great. And reason why I say great is because it looks like we've went to Google and we've listed the #1 buzzwords or the top 100 buzzwords, and we've put them on a resume. Use those words, use them intelligently in your day-to-day of how I'm operating with those things, not just a list. I'm running AI with this application and doing this with this data, or I've built 2019 servers using ESX or whatever that looks like, but tell the story. Don't just list the items. That's not going to get you anywhere. It's not the fact that I reject a resume when I see it. It's more the aspect of you're taking up space that you could really tell me your story. I don't want to care about if I understand buzzwords. I want to know how you've built what you've built. And what I mean by that is your experience, your knowledge, your wisdom, how are you going to impact my organization with what you're done and what you're doing now? Not so much that I know what buzzwords look like.
That's good.
Diana, any thoughts of what you've either historically seen in interviews or resumes, or what you are currently seeing?
So I was thinking about this question, and I don't do a ton of interviews and haven't for some time because a lot of my hiring managers are doing those initial interviews, reading resumes, and they send candidates to me, their top 1 or 2 candidates. But, what I look for from my perspective is culture fit and emotional intelligence and passion and interest for the job. And I look also to see how they're going to benefit not only our IT organization, but our company and our end customers overall, because every single dollar IT spends ends up in the premiums we charge to our customers. I work at an insurance company, and so I want to make sure that we're getting the value there, and that the person is going to help improve the value to our customers. And so that's probably the perspective I look at things at candidates. I want candidates who want to work at American Fidelity. I want them to be passionate about our mission and what we're doing for our customers.
No, that's good, because I think that means research who you're interviewing with, know their mission, know their product they're selling. So if you're going to go code for them or be a systems admin, know what your job brings to the company, know the business side, I guess. So that's good.
Yeah, and sometimes I do get occasionally those candidates that don't really know what we do, and it is frustrating because there are plenty of resources online that they can find that. And so if they're not willing to invest the time before the interview, will they invest the time after the interview?
Good point. Greg, what have you seen?
A couple of things. One is really long resumes. I'm just not going to read it. If you have 3 or 4 years of experience and you have 3 or 4 pages of resume, that doesn't make any sense. I don't know, general rule of thumb I've heard is like 1 page for every 10 years. There's probably a better rule, but something like that. But I think one of the newer things now that so many of us do things remote, no video is usually a bad sign on an interview. I know it's not all of these are people's fault, but man, it's unfortunate, but it's a bad look if you have bad internet connection and the whole interview is choppy and people cutting off and dropping off. And I think notification sounds, like your Google reading, your Slack popping in the background is to me kind of the new phone vibrating in an interview. So I would turn all that junk off if you're going into an interview, because it's really distracting whenever somebody's FaceTime is ringing through. And I know it's not on purpose, and I don't get, but it's neither is your cell phone ringing in an interview, but to turn your phone off. So it's just kind of that new world kind of a thing, I would say.
We actually started this off me asking Sarah, where do I turn off my notifications on Outlook so it doesn't chime during this? So that's a good point. And that's stuff not everybody's used to thinking about. Yeah.
Vonna, have you seen any pet peeves on resumes or in interviews in the past year?
So as far as pet peeves on resumes, I will say the buzzwords are a pet peeve of mine as well. I do want to see what you've done or how you've used those skills and not just a list. To me, I feel like sometimes people may just copy and paste job descriptions and put it on a resume, and that doesn't tell me how you could be a good fit for what I'm looking for. So I'm looking for, even if you've just taken a class in that, if you could put maybe what you've learned or what you did in that class, that would be more beneficial to me than to just list out a list of several skills that, you know, us in IT, we know, but we want to know what you know or what you've done or, you know, how you can best help us. And so that would be better suited in those experiences, in those kind of accomplishments. That's what attracts me to want to speak to someone as far as an interview. And as far as in the interview, I do agree with these virtual interviews just to make sure that your environment is free from distractions and make sure your background is free from distractions. And just make sure you're prepared for that interview, as well as when we're asking a question. Sometimes I see people telling a lot of stories and giving a lot of what we would call fluff. And I think, you know, in order to kind of respect everyone's time, I think the best thing would be to talk about your experiences, talk about your accomplishments, focus on those things so we can pull those things out to better be able to figure out if you're a good fit or not, and not have a lot of fluff or stories or, you know, elongate things that really shouldn't be, you know, a long drawn out answer. So that's, you know, some advice that I would give as far as to be a little bit more helpful during the interview process.
Bona, my grandma would have said, is there a caboose to the end of this train of the story that you're talking about? Yeah, she was not the one on fluff.
Another thing
Sorry, Diana, go ahead.
No, I was going to say another thing I look for are questions. You know, I intentionally leave about, you know, a third or a fourth of the time of the interview time for questions. And it's always very telling to me when candidates come in and don't have any questions. You know, they have time with me. So ask what the mission is, ask what the vision is, ask, you know, where the organization is going, where IT is going, you know, those kinds of things. It's just a good time to get more of those details.
I just wanted to add, as far as the interview process itself, when we talk about the buzzwords that Bona and I were talking about so strongly, when you get in front of the technologist, the team itself, and they start asking you very pertinent questions regarding your experience, I promise you, you will fail that interview. The team, and in fact, I could bring in the network operations or the network engineering team or whatever team I wanted to that are strong technologists. When you get to a point where you're in front of them and you can't answer specific questions that you say you have experience with, they're basic, that is a very bad thing. And a lot of times, especially if you're working with a recruiting agency, that word is going to get back to them, and that is going to hurt your chances on other opportunities unless you correct that. So that is a very pertinent thing that I'd like to hit home on.
What would be your advice if you are in an interview and somebody's asking you about a skill set and you're not strong enough in it, but you do have the desire and ambition to say, I can overcome that and handle it, but how, you know, because these people might be interviewing for positions that they meet 80% of the qualifications and they're trying to prove, I can do this, trust me. What would be your advice on that?
I think you can talk about how you utilize that technology. You may be very light in it. You may say that you've had experience in it, but talk about how you utilized it and say, well, I haven't gotten that advanced yet. However, because of what I did with this project or because of what I did within this class, whatever that training or whatever that experience is, talk about how you handled that. What were the inputs that you came from that? How did you experience the whole thing? Who did you discuss with to be able to get to that point? Who said that it was a home run or a failure? Talk about the interactions that you have with the entirety of the organization associated to that project, so that they can understand that you've thought of all the way through, that it wasn't only limited to a certain piece of it, but you've thought about it. Therefore, they're also going to understand, the people that are in the interview, that is, they're going to understand that you have a willingness to go past that point. Show it that I'm not limited by just that knowledge. I've wrapped my head around the details of whatever that was so that I can progress past that and get past that plateau.
I think so. You also have to be honest about what your level is, because you don't want to give the hiring manager a false understanding of where you are in that particular skill set. Because the last thing you want is to be hired because of that skill set and not be able to do the job.
And that's what I was going to say as well. Just be honest. I mean, we're not looking for the 100% perfect person, but if you are honest, that will show your drive and your initiative to want to be better. I mean, of course, we're all wanting to give chances to people to, do things that they want to do. And so if you come in that interview and you say, well, my X experience is not that great, but I wanted to get in this area, and so I took a class, or I worked on this project, or whatever your case may be. I think that shows more initiative, and that helps us as managers to say, okay, I have a candidate who may not have as much experience as I'm looking for, but they have that drive and that determination to want to be better or want to get in that field, and I would be more likely to give them an opportunity to do that.
That's good. Okay, so, and Diana, I think kind of hinted on this, on researching companies and understanding their mission. What advice would you give to individuals that very technical, but better understanding business, the money, the finance, being able to make their interview not just about them and their tech skills, but learning the business side of things, something they're not trained on?
Are you talking about that with respect to interview candidates or for internal candidates?
I would say when they're interviewing, being able to learn more on, like Diana, from your level, you're strategizing about, like, one hire could affect an entire project deadline, a goal, all the way down to revenues, and gaining that knowledge, or maybe figuring out how to research that, because you guys have probably learned that as you've climbed the corporate ladder and sat in different meetings, and you're like, oh, finance is really involved in what we can purchase. And that makes sense. Maybe I'm not asking it. Sarah, chime in and help me.
Meaning, like, how could they better understand the business needs, instead of just saying, hey, I'm great in this tech stack, or I'm great in this coding language. How can they better understand the needs of the business to show value there, instead of just talking about those buzzwords?
Yeah, I got you now. So I think that's where they can talk about some of the experiences that they've had, where they have worked to help the business understand how they can utilize technology. And, it's more than just understanding the technology, but it's understanding how to apply that technology to business to help the business win in the market, right? And so talking about that is way more interesting to me personally than whether or not you know a specific technology. But that's just because I have a different interview, because I'm not hiring directly for that specific technical need.
We talked about research a little bit earlier. The candidate has the ability to Google about anything that they would want. And if you look hard enough, you can determine that MidFirst is trying to get market share in small business loans, or whatever that may be. So you can talk specifically about how maybe a project could parallel with whatever your initiative is. What's the business driver in that situation? Is it profit? Is it impact? Is it market share? What does it look like? Is it reaching into different states? Well, I have done great at writing scripts to help onboard with acquisitions. Whatever that is, I try to equate it. Try to make it to where it's not just a story. This is something that's relatable to the business, and it could be finance, it could be whatever it looks like. But try to understand, and I think Diana hit it on perfectly, which is try to determine that, or try to explain that You determine the direction of whatever you're working on by working with business leaders or the people around whatever the impact was for the success of the project. Align it accordingly there.
Anybody else have input on that?
No, my input would echo the others' comments. I would go back to experience. Any role that you have, any job that you have, I would say that always look for opportunities outside of the box, outside of just doing your day-to-day job, just looking for being able to be more involved in the business operations side rather than behind the scenes with the support side of technology. And I think that will allow you to get more into the mindset that it's not just about coding or not just about, building out servers, but seeing that full picture of how that impacts everyone. And to be able to explain that to people of how you are understanding that, I think that will help. Of course, as you're looking for jobs, you can do as much research as possible on that industry. But I think just by building your experiences one by one and just being able to explain that you're not just in this pigeonhole of doing your specific technology job, but it does affect, the entire operations, and be able to explain that.
That's awesome.
Hi, Rebecca. I wanted to just chime in with a question that's gotten a lot of upvotes from our Slack channel. So for those of you who are joining us and you see that our chat is not active, it's because we are in our Techlahoma Slack channel under hashtag TechJobsWebinar. And this might be a question that some of you can answer, or maybe a discussion you've had in your teams, since you mentioned that many of you don't do the direct hiring, but you're more that final stop. Julia asked, I'd like to hear how many people they've personally hired or gotten jobs with that have lower experiences. Maybe like they just decided to get a project or complete projects or get certifications. She said that she's a degreed person and she would like more hard numbers around this because she feels a little disingenuous encouraging others to skip the degree route when there's all these other options out there. So I guess the question would kind of be tailored around the idea of those not going the traditional route of technology development and training, and those going these alternative routes, and your thoughts on that.
Good question.
So I don't know if I have hard numbers, but in my IT organization, I think we're about 50% degreed, 50% not, and we have about 200 colleagues in our IT department. Personally, when I am sent resumes, I will look to see if they have a degree, but that does not prevent them in any way from being a strong candidate, just because for the vast majority of our technology positions do not require degrees. So, that's one of the great things about IT is that it has low barrier of entry for people that are not degreed. So you just have to have a passion for what you do and be able to do it, I think, and then you can put a strong case together to get that tech job without a degree. But I think you have to show initiative. You have to show effort. If you don't have a degree and you have no technology experience, you're going to have to show me that you really want it and that you really know what you're getting into in order to be considered as a candidate for that job.
Anybody else?
I do want to echo what you're talking about. I think the philosophy that you have to have a degree in today's world is quickly becoming yesteryear's mentality. Speaking of someone that has multiple career, advanced career objectives, whatever that looks like, I may go through training, I could get a degree. It depends on what I want to do. But if I want to be a true technologist, I may just simply go to the career path of getting certifications or going through training or going through workshops or whatever that looks like. It doesn't necessarily mean that I have to go out and get a degree. And, I could talk about a couple different facets, but let's specifically talk about network operations. It's about 30% of the individuals in that group that have degrees. the most important piece is, do they fit culturally? Do they have competence wrapped around outside of just clicking the mouse or typing on the keyboard? And what are they going to do for the team from an initiative point of view? Because if the competence is there, if that intellect is there, they're going to grow. We can grow them organically with the experience and the knowledge that the rest of the team have. We talked about the mentorship. I think it's vital that a team that's set in stone mentor the up and coming, maybe even junior. If we're talking about a junior person coming up that doesn't have the experience, but someone that's taken the initiative to get an experience, work with your teams. Understand that they're the mentors, that's the mentee, whatever that looks like, so that they can grow that. So just, I don't think we have any numbers associated to it. I gave it the 30 percentile associated to that, but show initiative. I don't think that if I'm looking for a technologist, am I looking for a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree or a master's degree or whatever that looks like? No, I'm looking for your experience and your capability of performing the job duties and responsibilities more than anything.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of piggyback on that. And this is straight anecdotal. But about 5 or 6 years ago, I was looking myself to make a move. And one of the opportunities that came across my email required a degree. And my first question was, do you require degrees of like all of your software developers? And they said, yes. And I said, well, I don't want to work there then. Because you're unnecessarily limiting your ability to recruit really talented people. And so I think that's becoming much more normal. I mean, Google doesn't require it anymore. Amazon doesn't require it. Tesla, SpaceX, they don't require it. That'll just trickle across.
What about for management roles? What's your take on that? No?
Not for me.
Okay.
I do like to see that type of degree platform in my management roles right now, just because that's the history that I have with it. And what I mean by that is, I don't necessarily have managers or leaders in the organization now that don't have some type of degree. It doesn't mean that the next group of individuals coming up that are going to lead IT organizations are going to have degrees. That just means that currently the groups that we have do have degrees. If you have experience is, in my opinion, much more vital with management and leadership than it is just a degree in hand. There are opportunities to get that experience, and sadly, there's not I can't just jump in there as a technologist and become a manager. You're going to have to go through training. You're going to have experience. You're going to have that history to be able to jump into those roles, regardless if you have a degree or not.
Kristen,
I was actually thinking about my leadership team at AFA, and we have individuals or managers that have degrees, but they're not always in what you think they would be in. So you would think they'd be in computer science or math or things like that. But we have one that has a linguistics degree, one that has a journalism degree. Our former CIO had a social work degree, and the one prior to that had a psychology degree. So I don't think it's definitely not a requirement in our job descriptions for managers to have degrees. But it's also varied on what they do have.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. It seemed like some of the follow-up questions revolved very much around this conversation. And so a few other questions that were connected to that are, what are your recommendations as to things they should highlight on their applications or in their resumes or in their cover letters to reflect all the projects they've worked on that may not have been a part of their job, or that eagerness to be a part of your organization? And secondly, I just wanted to highlight, it sounds like most of you, it's really a matter of culture as to if this is the right company for you to work at. If they have these stipulations and they're not willing to look deeper, that's really what could be impacting some of the people on our webinar who are watching and the struggles that they're having. So it's exciting to see that you're all doing something a little different. And I know Devana looked like she was probably going to add something to the last question. Didn't know if you wanted to start maybe.
Sure. So, back to your original question, I wouldn't get discouraged. I mean, like the other panelists have said, the technology sphere is so ever changing. It's hard to define the specific requirements. Even, when I was in college, there was no C sharp, there were no, some of these upcoming technologies, and so it's ever changing, and so you're having to be prepared to have that mindset that I'm not going to stay the same regardless if I went to college or not. And so you have to have that mindset that I'm going to stay on top of these technologies. I'm going to have the ability to learn, or the aptitude to want to learn and want to grow and want to develop. And that's what I'm looking for as far as an individual that will want to come onto my team, someone that has that drive, the aptitude, the knowledge to be able to want to step in, want to do their best in their role that they're in, but always have that mindset that they're ever changing, always wanted to do that continuous process improvement in their career. So that's kind of what I would say I would be looking for, and that's what I would encourage people. And especially, like you were saying, highlighting things that are not their specific jobs. I would rather see a resume that looks like that just highlights their accomplishments, their experiences, instead of just putting down a job description of what their previous job role was. I want to see, like, what did you accomplish? Even if you were in a IT support role and you did some project management in that role, or you did some server support or security support. I want to see that rather than, like I said, just copying and pasting what your job description was. So I would encourage that for people.
Any other questions, Kristen?
We did have one question, and this could be maybe like a quick fire question. When we were talking about mentoring at the beginning of the webinar, one question was, how do you even find a mentor? So maybe if you all want to give like a 15-second, 30-second, how do you find a mentor? How would that be?
I found my mentor, my main mentor anyway, by just looking around my company and seeing who I admire and who I thought could help answer some of the questions that I had and help me along the way.
I second that. It's all about observance. It could be in your personal circle or your professional circle. It doesn't matter. Look who is holding themselves accountable themselves, who is presenting themselves in a professional manner in the capacity that you want to be seen as, and then who more is focused more on the moral aspect of their job or their person or doing the things that they're doing. If you identify those, reach out to them. It's amazing. Most people want to mentor. Most people want to have that relationship. Don't be afraid of it. Simply see it, reach out to them, try to make a connection. They're going to be willing. I know that I am. I love it when people reach out to me for that type of thing. And just because I like people, and most mentors like people. They love to try to help lead and to evolve people.
And I would echo that as well. And I would just say, no matter what, circle or environment you find that person in, just step out there and just do it. Just reach out to that person. Like James said, people want to help. And if they don't, then, don't take it personally. Just move on to the next opportunity or situation. I mean, just, have that open mind and just reach out to people and just start it and let it organically grow.
Yeah, I would just say, for me, the main mentor that I have had for a long time now, I just started looking for people who had a job that I wanted to have, or were in a similar role but were much more advanced than I was. And I just linked in a bunch of people and just messaged them on LinkedIn and said, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. This is why I reached out. And it was overwhelming. And I think most people who are in these types of roles feel, I know I do anyway, feel incredibly blessed and very fortunate and very lucky to have got the breaks that I got. And anytime I can help somebody get a similar break, I want to try to do that. And I think most people feel similar.
All right. Oh, Diana, did you have something?
No, I was going to add that, a lot of people helped me in my career and along my journey. And so giving back is the very least I can do to help people. When I look at my team today, and every single one of them mentors me in one way or another. They teach me how to become a better leader. They teach me what it means to be a better leader. And so giant shout out to my team as well.
I know we're in the last 5 minutes of our webinar. Rebecca, Sarah, do you have any other questions that you want to tie this up with? I'm happy to ask a final question.
If there's a good question that somebody's watching asks, that would be great. I have one. I could come up with a million.
Well, one of the final questions that's a little different from what we've covered, and hopefully those of you who are watching who may have joined late, this video will be on YouTube for you to watch again. I encourage you, if you missed any of this discussion, I think this is a great discussion. Put on while you're working and listen to the thoughts of our panelists. But one conversation or question was brought up around the fact that this one individual, Travis, has a focus on DevOps. And so he was wondering about, jobs that are focused on that. Currently, I'm basically managing the builds, releases, source codes, et cetera, for my company, and I'm not sure how marketable this is making me. So I'm kind of curious whether you want to take the DevOps focus on your question, or just in general tips for making you more marketable. What would you guys have to share with our guests?
I bet you Rebecca or Sarah could say how marketable DevOps is.
Very marketable.
Yeah, I think one thing that
you're doing good.
Yeah, I think one thing that's important for everybody that's watching or will watch is to understand, like, I know at least for me, I've been hiring for over 20 years, which means two things. One, I'm old, and two, I've been talking to people who've been hiring for a very long time, and we've had the same conversations last week that I had 20 years ago, that we had 10 years ago. Finding good people is really, really hard. Hiring is really hard. And I don't want people to undersell the fact that, like, you're in a really, really marketable position, and you're interviewing the company just as much, if not more, than they're interviewing you. There are a lot of companies that are hiring right now. Find the company that works best for you. And whether it's DevOps or your front end or a back end, or you like dabbling in both, or you work on servers or whatever, you can find a job. It's just a matter of finding the right fit. And I think fit's something that's kind of come up over and over. And I think it's just as important, if not more important, for the hiree as it is the hirer.
Amen.
As marketable as DevOps is, there's a ton of people that have that type of experience. Set yourself apart with some type of interpersonal capability, or something that you're doing from a social aspect. What am I doing to give back? That is a big distinction with anyone, because I can look at resumes all day long that say the exact same thing about what they do at a job, day-to-day experience, whether it be DevOps in AWS or local or wherever that looks like. Set yourself apart. Find out what it's going to do to distinguish you between the rest of the group. Look up the rest of them on LinkedIn, the people that are out there looking for jobs. What are they doing? How are they doing it? How can I be better than that? And I don't mean technically. What I mean is, what am I going to give back to that company that isn't at the keyboard level?
I agree. Soft skills are key. I would say that DevOps is an ever-growing environment, and I think it would be, something that I would stick to if that's what you're doing right now. But the soft skills, I'm looking for someone who can interact with the business and be able to understand what they are requiring and be able to apply your skills and your experiences to help solve their needs. So if you had that extra skill and took out that middle person of having to translate between the two, I think that is a really good kind of step to boost you to be beyond the normal candidate in that same field.
Yes. Well, to our panelists, James, Greg, Devonna, Diana, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to share your wealth of knowledge to Techlahoma. This has been so great. Thank you.
Thank you. We know your time is valuable, and this has been I think our largest RSVP attended talk. So
Yes, we had roughly about 60 to 65 people watching us live. I'm sure we'll have more people who join us. We've messaged everyone who RSVP to let them know that they can watch this video later and to connect with us in our Slack channel so we can continue this conversation. So panelists, thank you so much. You will probably get a lot of ads. We've requested that everyone who would like to join them on LinkedIn, please say that you met them via the Techlahoma webinar so that they're clearly aware of that connection. I think you all helped in confirming some of the things we've talked about recently. Networking is important. Research of people, businesses, organizations, jobs you want is important. But I hope everyone can take away from this. There are people who care and want to help you. So I do want to thank Rebecca and Sarah from Heartbreak Staffing. Heartbreak Staffing is a Oklahoma City-based company that helps with staffing tech jobs. And so please reach out to their team if you have been looking for a job. We have people joining us from outside of Oklahoma. Hey, we'd like you to move here. So if you're looking for a job and you've been struggling, you just got some great connections, and we'd love to have you as part of our technology industry here in the state of Oklahoma to continue to grow and expand our opportunities here. So we are now at the top of the hour. Thank you so much again for everyone who attended, everyone who shared your wisdom. It was greatly appreciated. Our Slack channel has a lot of thank yous. And again, you'll probably see that in your LinkedIn very soon. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Everyone stay safe and healthy, and we will see you next month.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen.